Following complaints of trapped funds in Nigeria, United Arab Emirates, UAE flag carrier, Emirates Airlines says effective September 1, it will stop flight operations in and out of Nigeria. This was announced in a statement by the airline on Thursday. The airline stated that the suspension is due to its inability to repatriate its earnings in forex from Nigeria. Last month, Emirates asked Hadi Sirika, Minister of Aviation, to support the repatriation of its funds amounting to $85 million. Nigeria is facing a forex challenge crisis, and this has seen the naira depreciate against the dollar. United Arab Emirates flag carrier noted that the suspension will help in containing further losses and reduce the impact on its operational costs that continue to accumulate in the Nigerian market. So joining us now this morning as we discuss this move by Emirates Airlines is Alex Nwuba, President, Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association of Nigeria. Great to have you, sir. Real quickly, I'm getting another part of the story that Emirates is just trying to arm twist Nigeria. There's that argument some people in the aviation sector are making, that this problem had been on ground for a while, that anytime Emirates feels like it brings up the issue, tries to twist us and all of that. What do you say about this other argument people are making in the aviation sector?
Good morning, and thank you for having me on the show again. You can present any argument you want, and we tend to do that when it suits us. Emirates operates into Nigeria under an agreement with Nigeria, under the Bilateral Air Service Agreement between the UAE and Nigeria. And in that agreement, it sets forth certain conditions for which we operate. So as Emirates operates into Nigeria, so does Air Peace operate to the UAE. Can you imagine the challenges economically we are facing in this country and the challenges that are being faced by the airline itself if it sold tickets to go to the UAE and come back for Nigerians to benefit from that process, and then can't get that money on top of the high interest rate it has to pay for money? So that argument is essentially not tenable. Emirates has operated has sold tickets in Nigeria. They've earned money in naira as mandated by the government. They had the option of collecting in dollars, so they just transfer the funds directly from their account. But they've earned revenue in naira, and they've said we want to take the money out, and we throw these kinds of arguments up. We of course respect the fact that we face economic challenges, we're facing foreign exchange challenges in the economy, but that does not exempt us from our obligation to transfer these funds when they are requested by the company that's earned them. Another example is Air Peace as well operates into South Africa. They have one of the strictest foreign exchange regimes in getting money out, but certainly Air Peace must be getting its sales from that market out as well. So we can't argue.
It stopped to South Africa.
Well, it stopped not because it couldn't get the funds out. It stopped because there was difficulty of Nigerians getting visas to go to South Africa. But that's an entirely different scenario. We can't, as a country, enter into agreements. And we've entered into a lot of them. One of the more important ones we've entered is the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, where we agree to trade within ourselves. If we enter into agreements without the intention of fulfilling the terms of that agreement, or we've entered previously into agreements in which we cannot fulfill the terms, what is the opportunity for us to be taken seriously in the Committee of Nations?
Okay. Let's look at it this way. What do you think is responsible for this rivalry between domestic airlines, Nigerian airlines, and foreign airlines operating in and out of Nigeria? And is it true, as alleged by Emirates and the other airlines, that their funds have been blocked? Total, over $600 million. Emirates is talking about $80 million affected by it. Is that really a problem? Or is it a shared problem that nobody should complain about?
It is a problem. It is a problem. Let's look at why do people actually fly? If we look at the statistics, Nigerians have left this country. They did not live on Nigerian carriers. They move about, they come and go. September is coming. Children will be returning to the UK, US, Australia, Canada, all kinds of places for their schools. Their parents remit funds back. It's one of the key economic support systems that exist. Last year, or this year, projected 39 billion will come from these Nigerians that live in the diaspora. Foreign direct investment is only 1.6 billion, okay? Oil sales is about 34 billion. So we're talking about a considerable amount of money brought back to support this economy by people living outside the country. How do they go? they go by flying through foreign carriers, and these foreign carriers sell. Is there a rivalry between domestic carriers and international carriers? Absolutely not. These two operate differently. Domestic carriers operate within the domestic environment, for which they have to source dollars to buy parts, buy other things to support their business, crew training, insurance, etc. While foreign carriers sell tickets in Naira to be remitted back to their home country. So it's really a significant difference in the types of operation. There exists no competition in that space. The needs are different. The question is, having accumulated sales in the Nigerian environment, do you have the right to do that? Nigeria, for example, signed a bilateral air service agreement with the UK. Clause 15 says that the funds, the tickets when sold in Nigeria in Naira, as mandated by the Nigerian government, will be transferred back to the UK without delay and without any extraneous requirements. And what have they done? These carriers have said, okay, we're selling our tickets for $1,000. The government says the exchange rate is 400 Naira to $1 at the point. So our ticket is 400,000 Naira. So when the time comes to remit these funds and we start to make excuses that we have no money, we have challenges, what does that say about us in attracting foreign investment?
I mean, it speaks volumes, but concerning the rivalry, let's go back to what even happened between the Nigeria and Dubai routes. The minister had to step in, and you know that the foreign airline that was still going to that same Dubai route had to overpopulate at a point to be able to shirk out Nigerian airlines from going to that route and pick up most of their passengers. As we speak to date, there's also a report in the aviation sector that a certain Nigerian airline has put up an application to be able to fly to the UK, an indigenous airline, but it's not been granted in over 8 months. And these are high-level conversations still going. So when you talk about that there's no rivalry, then I quip a bit and I look at you again.
Okay, let's break this down in the proper sense of it. Airlines don't just on their own get up and say they're going to the UK or US, etc. There exist agreements within those two nations that you will come to my country, I will come to yours. And so for the UK, for example, British Airways has been coming here for decades, and the Nigerian carriers want to operate into that market. The agreement clearly states that for X number of flights from the UK to Nigeria, there should be X number of flights from Nigeria to the UK. If the UK is not honoring it, then Nigeria needs to ask the UK to honor the agreement signed between the parties in the very same way Emirates is asking Nigeria to honor the obligation to transfer the funds when those things are made. So the two issues are not the same. They are separate issues that need to be dealt with separately and not commingled in making the case for not remitting payments that are due to foreign carriers. There is definitely that aeropolitics, as it's called, where countries try to give advantage to each other. But those things should have been covered in the bilateral air service agreement. So we may say that even those agreements are faulty, but who signed this agreement? Who negotiated this agreement? Who entered this into the agreement? And there are additional provisions. For example, we lack the capacity on a major scale to reciprocate on the terms of the agreements we agreed. So what have we done as a nation to boost that? We talk about, for example, starting the national carrier in a bid to fulfill that obligation that we have. The challenge, therefore, is if we have these problems, we have to address them. We have to fight the fight, but we have no grounds to stand on to fight that fight of fairness and equity in the agreements when we dishonor other conditions that we've entered into in these bilateral agreements.
Okay. We've been talking about Emirates Airlines, right? But there was also a story out there yesterday about Turkish Airlines, saying that it will only provide transportation for Nigerians in two categories, C and Y categories, right?
Correct.
Yeah, there was some story about charging for tickets in dollars. They've debunked that. They say that's not true. Correct. They still sell tickets in Naira. Correct. But what is the significance of saying only two categories, are available to Nigerians on Turkish Airlines?
There's something called airline revenue management, and what airlines try to do is to maximize the revenue on each trip. An airplane is like a hotel night. Once the night is gone, the room is gone. So every flight is very much the same way. And so you set multiple categories of fares on the flight so that you can maximize your revenue on those categories. And so C is the typical business category, and Y is the maximum economy category. There used to be multiple categories. So they're saying we will charge the highest fares in each category because there is the possibility that Nigeria will not honor its obligations to remit the funds for which we have calculated our revenues at. So look, let's go back 20, 30 years ago. We had British Airways here still. We had Varig Air. We had the Brazilian Airlines. We had airlines from all different parts of Europe. And we had a similar situation. Those airlines were making sales in Nigeria, could not remit the funds. They were borrowing funds from their home country banks to continue to conduct operations until it almost led them to bankruptcy and multiple airlines pulled out. If airlines pull out of Nigeria, how do we actually provide a means for Nigerians to travel outside? We always go and say we'll float the national carrier. But yes, we'll float the national carrier. We say we'll start it with 3 leased aircrafts that will operate domestically. Does that address the needs of Nigerians who want to go to China, to Australia, to Canada, to the UK, etc.? So what the airlines are saying, I'm going to charge the highest fare category because they represent a risk that I may have to buy dollars outside of the official channels, and to minimize my loss, I'll charge the highest available fare because the Nigerian law does not allow them to charge in foreign currency. If they did, it would be transparent. It would be one-to-one essentially.
So what do we do in a case like this? Obviously, like you stated, there's no money on ground. We're not honoring this agreement. We're stuck in a limbo. Does our flying public suffer, or we get alternatives with our own airlines? Do the British government, for instance, ask our Nigerian airlines that have been applying to be able to come to the UK in a while, and their airlines are coming here? So what do we do?
Well, I didn't say we have no money. We have 36 billion, as we reported in our reserve account. So you have money.
So our reserve to service foreign airlines?
It's not about. We can't separate monies into various categories. We have money available to us to save. It's a savings account. Let me use you as an individual. You have 1 billion, as I would expect, Rufai, in your savings account, and you have obligations of 100,000. Do you go and borrow to pay the 100,000, or do you dip into your savings with the expectations that you would do something by yourself to earn that money and replace it? So money in the savings account is not fixed. It is not solely for the basis of boosting your savings account. It's for meeting obligations and showing confidence to those that lend you money and those you do business with, that you have the capacity to meet your needs. You must demonstrate that capacity to meet your needs. Imagine that we told investors that invested in the stock market and invested in individual companies in the economy that we don't have any money to pay you. Then how do we go out and tell people to come and invest in our economy? How do we go out? The reality is, if we don't pay, these airlines will pull out. If they pull out, we have no capacity to go to these markets. Now, that brings us to the next issue. What are we doing within our own country to develop that capacity? We need to take airlines like Air Peace, Ibom Air, and categorize them as flag carriers to go to these destinations, to tap into these opportunities. So therefore, our argument at that point will be, we want to come to the UK, but you're not letting us, so we'll not let you come. And then we fight a different battle from the one where...
But that's the argument on ground.
But that's a different... But it is...
has been trying to get into the UK,
but it is a different battle from the one that somebody sold tickets and cannot get their money. We should fight that battle you're asking us to do. The government needs to step up and force the UK to abide by the agreements reached with Nigeria with regards to capacity. On one level, to allow Air Peace to come to Nigeria, to the UK, to allow Ibom Air come to the UK, to allow Asman. That's a different battle. We can't just mix these things because they are convenient for us. We fight all our battles with integrity. Our problem appears to be now that we are beginning to show a lack of integrity.
Mr. Nwuba, let's talk about jet fuel, aviation fuel. I mean, some reports indicate that our airports are now empty. For you to go to Abuja one way or maybe return, you have to pay as much as 150,000.
Unfortunately.
On the economy class. We were told that in January, aviation fuel was 180 naira. Now it's around the territory of 900 naira.
900 naira, correct,
yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so for how long are we going to find ourselves in this situation? What should government do? Some airline operators have said they want direct access to Forex so that they can have a better opportunity to buy aviation fuel. What do you think government should do? And for how long are Nigerians going to suffer? We can't go on the roads. We can't go in the trains. We can't even travel by air. We're stranded.
We're back to this issue. We've been talking about it since early this year. We're now going to the third quarter of the year. We're still talking about issues. What have we done? The prices keep rising. It's really, the prices are not indicative of what we're doing domestically. It's the problem globally. But you see, many countries of the world, and this is what was contemplated a few years ago, have reserves. If we had reserves, we will be able to attend to these kinds of shocks. But we don't have them, so what do we do now? We must find ways, not by airlines going and importing fuel. That's not their business. They're not the best equipped to do that, as proposed by AON in their previous, and they've basically stepped back from that argument. We've got to find mechanisms to buy and stock and hold significant quantities of jet fuel, diesel, automotive gas, and all of these things, and then be forward thinking. As I've said earlier, we have domestic refining capacity for which product has not been made available. So we even have the product of dealing with the domestic issues that make the product available, whether it is crude oil or it is gas. We have to begin to address our economy. We can't keep coming back every day and say, we had this problem, and we can't see attendant. There hasn't even been a meeting to discuss a way forward by all stakeholders. So we really need to sit down and begin to address our issues piece by piece.
There was a meeting actually by the CBN and a couple of other stakeholders, the airline owners and operators, where the CBN was suggesting an idea of, okay, they were going to buy at a specific rate a certain volume of aviation fuel. How did that meeting go? There was that idea being made.
The fuel came and was consumed. We consumed millions of...
So the CBN has given the airline operators that fuel?
The NMPC, CBN is not a fuel provider, but the NMPC has provided the fuel that's been consumed. You know, this thing burns like we consume millions of liters of it, and so that's gone. We have to keep addressing these issues going forward. We need to be forward thinking more. We need to project further, and we need data to project further. That's important.
So we need another cycle of that probably to be able to hedge against these prices.
Well, you see, that's subsidy, and I personally, as a human being, is against subsidy. All of the challenges we are facing are the result of subsidy. Okay, we cannot subsidize airline tickets. We cannot subsidize petroleum products. We have to build a real economy. A subsidy economy is not a real economy.
Okay, what are those specific issues that you think we need to address in Nigeria in the aviation sector? Before now, there was talk about bailout. Right? So much talk about that. It did not work. On aviation fuel, yes, government promised earlier in the year to supply, fuel at a subsidized rate. That's probably what you refer to. It's been consumed. Government cannot probably go forward. But what are those specific issues that you think we need to address?
I think we need to look at this industry holistically. It's an industry. It's not just parts of a process, okay? So where do we want... Look, we have before us the African Continental Free Trade Area. We have the African Open Skies Agreements. We've signed these agreements. And in those agreements, we have to be competitive. We can't be consumers in that agreement. It cannot be an agreement we've entered into in which we enter into the agreement, then you have Ethiopian Airlines and Kenya Airlines dominating our airspace and sucking, like we're talking about, sucking all the money out of our economy to their economies. So we've got to address what position do we want to play within the framework of those agreements. And one of the quickest ways is to step up the role of our domestic carriers to be key players within the framework of those agreements. That is one area. So we've got to look at what kind of airline industry do we want going forward. We have to look at the space of aircraft maintenance. They'll be looked at in a number of ways. Ibom Air is building a maintenance facility. Aero has one going on. We have parts issues we've got to do. One of the key ones will be the aviation leasing company that the government's proposed now for decades, where we use the sovereign wealth of the nation as a basis to get low-cost interest financing terms to acquire aircraft that can be used by the domestic industry, which reduces the cost of acquiring aircraft. We have to look at that. We have to look at the plans for airports. You and I know, we talk about international carriers, and you have to wonder the kind of place they come into for which we ask for a lot of money. We've got to look holistically at the issue of airports. We're not talking about, we've put out a proposal for cargo airports, but all of the state airports are cargo airports. What have we done about that? Next week, There'll be a discussion at the Aviacargo conference on the future of the air cargo business and how we take advantage of it. Today, there are multiple layers of government that intercede in the process of exports, and that creates challenges to the whole space of exports. So we've got to take holistically, the Ministry of Aviation needs to sit down and forget this idea of floating an airline and leave that to the private sector and support that sector to grow and be competitive both on a regional and international basis, and start to think holistically, what kind of aviation industry do we want to have in this country, and what are the pillars on which we will build those solutions.
All right, thank you so much. Because we have to go because of time, I want to talk to you about airlines going on there in Nigeria, but maybe some other day we'll have that conversation.